So the next part of project management, event project management, is about cost and budgets and sponsorship. Now, obviously, you'll be doing marketing. Well, I hope anyway, you'll be doing courses in marketing and hopefully on finance. So this is from a project management point of view. Project management is big on this sort of stuff, and you can learn a lot. So let's start the ball rolling here. Okay, there's a little photo for you. This is the Mongolian festival that I helped put on. Those guys are firing arrows as they ride on their horses. Now, if you remember, I showed you this diagram. Those on the left are the areas of management for any event. And we're looking at, or we had a look at procurement, and now we're going to look at finance. Okay, so obviously the two parts of finance is the money coming in, the money going out. So finance, and these are the topics we're going to look at. Now, if you're not familiar with the terms, look them up, okay, and to make sure that you understand the terminology. This terminology is common all around the world, by the way, and it's used by accounts, by just about every company I've worked for, from major mining companies to banks to everybody. So get used to this terminology. And when we're talking about cost, these are the things that you need to know about. How to estimate the cost of the event, right? And how to classify those costs, and of course, how to control them. I'll be going through each of these, by the way. So basically, there's three levels to event finance. There's the big level, which is where governments give you money to do some festival, or you work for some big company, and it all has to do with financial planning and strategic decisions. And this is over periods of years. So that's one level of the finance. The next level of the finance is the event team. You maybe have an event company or a team, in which case you get a yearly budget or allocation, or you have to get it from ticket sales or something like that. Within a company, you may be competing for other projects that they will spend money on, okay, and you may get in-kind help from other departments, and sometimes you'll get staff will come over from other departments like marketing to help you with the event itself. And then the actual event, and this is what we'll be looking at, which is the event project finance, okay, which has to do with operational costs, and cash flow. Now, this is the financial management process, and I'll be going through this, so there's no need for you to understand everything here. By the way, this could be one of the assignment questions, the assignment 2. If you have a look at assignment 2, I'll be sending you a process, and you'll be doing you'll be explaining that process, and you'll be applying it to the event that you're proposing in assignment 1. And each person will get a different process. So this one could be yours, so better pay attention. So at this point, it's a good idea for you to get out your spreadsheet and get an idea of how much you're going to spend on this event. Now, I've mentioned before, budget is it's an awkward term, because if you've got an event that depends on ticket sales or entrance fee or conference fees or something like that, then you really don't know what the budget is in the sense of how much money you've got. But you've still got to get some idea. And so I want you to have a page called the budget and a spreadsheet, and now to work through how much money is going to be allocated to each part of this event. So Now, this is not one I want you to copy by any means, but it gives you an idea of a real one. This is for a festival you can see in 2006. They're all the same. And what they've done, you can see how they've done theirs. Now, I don't necessarily want you to copy this by any means, but it gives you an idea of what, you'll see the items there, they're all resources. What a surprise. So it actually comes from the resource list. Everything there is a resource for the event and it all costs money, obviously. And that's what you have to, that's what you do. When you're looking at events, it may be in 3 months' time, it may be in 6 months' time, it may be in a couple of years, like the Olympics. So what you would have to do is look at forecasting. What will it be like? Now, you know with the COVID business that forecasting is not 100% foolproof. Obviously, there can be disasters or crisis around the world, which will mean your forecast means absolutely zero. I mean, who predicted that all events would close for almost a year or 2 years in the case of some countries? However, you've got to put something down, and so you have to have a look at some things. And obviously, there are world trends that are happening. And this may affect your event, particularly if you're doing tourism events where people are coming in from outside. You really have to have a look at what the trends are. If you're doing corporate events, the trends in events itself is going to be very important because corporates, a lot of them, not all of them, but want the latest. You know, they want, when fireworks came out, everyone wanted fireworks. Now the drones are out, everyone wants drones. I don't mean everyone, but, you know, a lot of the corporate gigs will want the latest in anything that's, you know, it shows that they're real leading edge. So, you know, they all want software running their events now. I can't go into these in any great example, but you know about sensitivity analysis. Remember, I talk about that with regard to having a look at each aspect of the event and saying, well, look, if I spent more money on it, would it improve the event? If I spent less money on it, would it make any difference? And that's what you're doing. There's a thing called, one thing that is important is called commitment accounting. Now, this is a whole world, and it's a good idea for you to have a look at it. In events, you use commitment accounting all the time. And that means that, let's say that I've got $20,000 to spend on the staging of an event, meaning the stage area, you know, and I ring up a lighting company and they quote $5,000 for the lighting for the stage. Now, I haven't sent invoices, I haven't done anything, but I've agreed that we'll engage them and it costs $5,000. That's a commitment. Now you only have $15,000 left. And that's called commitment accounting. And there's no invoices, so accountants don't understand it. But the reality of the world is that this is how it works. I could tell you a lot about that, but you just look it up. Now, you have to estimate the cost of your event. And what often happens, and it's basically once you get a lot of experience in events, you can estimate how much things cost. Okay, you get pretty good at this. Okay. So experience, you estimate. Now, this is important because you guys, being students, are looking around for exact things, and that's not what it's about. Everything is an estimate, and the estimate could be plus or minus 10%, could be a lot more, an estimate. And this is very important. Don't try to get exactitude. And the reason is that the things will only be exact basically on the day of the event because things will change so dramatically. So what you've got to do is estimate. Okay, it's often called a ballpark figure. Okay, they also call it a cost envelope. Okay, so that's what you're estimating. Bottom up, and this is what a lot of people assume that you do, which is where you look at each resource, you add up how much each resource costs, and then you add the whole thing up, and you throw in 20% or whatever for management, and that's called the cost of the event. The problem with that, is that As you get closer to the event, those costs will change dramatically. And believe me, they will. Don't even think for a minute. Airlines are a good example. Their costs go, the fee, well, the ticket price for airlines will go, you could be sitting next to someone who's paying $50 or $500 for their seat, and you would have paid $2,000 for the seat sitting next to them. It's called dynamic costing. And this happens a lot all through the hospitality industry. This dynamic, I mean, a classic case is hotels. You know, you can get a hotel, you know, for maybe $200 or $300 a night, and you come in at a different time, it'll be $1,000 a night, okay, for a room in a hotel. I should add that when you get into the event sector, they're the rooms that you will be having. So it's often called rolled up. So you roll up all the costs to get the cost of the event. Once again, estimating. Now, the one that the really experienced event managers use is called parametric estimating. That means you find one aspect of the event, and multiply it by the number of times that aspect occurs. It could be the per head cost, right, of a hospitality event. And that's very common, you know, because hospitality events, food will be one of the big things. The food will be costed according to the number of people. Therefore, the number of people gives you an idea of how much the whole event costs. Now, you can do that with, believe it or not, you can do that with a lot, but you've got to be really sharp to do this. And you've got to be very smart. I can almost tell you the cost of a lot of events, even in France, right, by using a parametric costing. It's very straightforward when you get to it, and it can be just as accurate, if not more accurate, than the other ways of costing. What's the example? The example I've got there is the exhibition costs. If you get into the exhibition industry, the cost of the exhibition, in other words, how much the whole thing's going to cost, will be related to the floor space. And if you actually go to an exhibition, you'll find that the floor, when you look down, is made up of 1 meter by 1 meter squares. You probably never noticed it, but have a look at the carpet. And the reason for that is that then they can cost out each exhibitor according to the space they take up. And they don't have to measure it out because it's right there on the carpet or the flooring of the exhibition. So that's what it's there for. And that's a good example of a parameter. The exhibition guys are very good at this. Let's keep going. So estimating, that's just me telling you how important estimating is. You know, once again, you will be wrong with the budget. You won't get it exact. If you try to get an exact budget, you'll be wrong. You have to estimate what the budget will be. There's nothing wrong with that. So then when you're having a look at the costs, you've got to classify them. Why do you have to classify them? Because some costs are high risk. In other words, they'll change dramatically, and other costs will be really straightforward. They'll stay the same over a period from when you actually look at the costing to when the event's on. So unique and standard costs they have. So unique costs have a high risk, and unique costs can change dramatically. And I could provide you 1,000 examples. Let's say you're doing an event that requires you to build a Viking ship. I know that sounds crazy, but it does happen. The Viking ship is a unique cost. Nobody really knows how much a Viking ship costs, as distinct from, as I said before, how much a data projector costs. A data projector is a standard cost. You can compare lots of people who supply them. But a Viking ship, there aren't a lot of suppliers of wooden Viking ships. So that's a unique cost. So you've got to be very careful, and they're the ones that have the high risk, and they're the ones you've got to keep your eye on it, and that's why you have a classification of cost. Other cost classifications are direct costs, things that actually cost at the event. Let's go back to the Viking ship. If that is a direct cost to the event. You wouldn't have the Viking ship except for the event. That's called the direct cost. But your management is an indirect cost, okay? Because not the management of that event, but your general management, meaning the office that you have, all the computers and things like that. And they're sometimes called overheads. And you've got to make sure they're part of the budget. And you'll forget that. I can tell you now, every student does. You'll put down how much the sound system costs, but you won't put down how much your office costs, right? How much you would allocate of the office expenses for the 6 months leading out from the event. And then another thing that you have to look at is what are called one-off or recurring costs. Why is that important? Because you have what's called a payment schedule. Money will be coming in at different times. I've told you about the venue. You know, they may ask for a deposit of, let's say, 40% when you first go there. Then they may ask for another 10% leading up, and then they'll ask for the remainder just before the event. That's a payment schedule. And you want to make sure money's coming in to cover all these things. Money's coming in to cover all of these things. So you have a schedule. Okay, so payment schedule is a very important part of project management, event project management. Now, this is very important because people forget all this. They really forget that everything is about time and there is a deadline. And just to make sure that you understand that, have a think of the event itself, right? It's on a certain day. If you miss that day with everything, you don't have an event, which means you've made no money. Right? You've made no value. So all that work leading up to it is worth nothing. So everything is about time. Another thing that you may meet because you're a master of event management is opportunity cost. And people will use this term a lot, so you better get used to it. And opportunity cost means that if we put your event on, right, we aren't putting other things on at the same time, or another type of event, and we've lost that opportunity. Now, that opportunity, the other event, may have made a much better return on investment or profit than your event. So we've actually lost money by putting your event on, and that's called an opportunity cost. Once again, if you don't understand this thing, you're welcome to ask me questions, obviously, but it's really good if you can look these things up and get a definition of terms. Definition of terms, right? It'll do you very well for your whole career if you have your own dictionary. You can't run around looking things up, and they're not always going to be up on the web for you. As I told you about, Google's now an advertising company. There's not Wikipedia. Is not always going to be there, and it's turning into a bit of a flop as well. So you want to make sure you get your own dictionary of events together. Okay. So generally, this is the graph that's shown in a lot of courses, and it's quite wrong. And I'll explain why it's wrong. But we'll go through it first. What you're often taught is that you have the number of tickets sold on the bottom, the x-axis, and you have the amount of money that you're making on the y-axis. And that's extremely simplified and misses out on the one thing I just told you about, which is the deadline. Because if your event doesn't go ahead, right, it doesn't matter how many tickets you've sold, you're going to have to refund the whole lot. So you've made nothing. So we'll get to that in a second. Now, what happens with your, in the normal model for this is that you have fixed costs. You know, the fixed costs might be the venue, the staging, etc. Okay, so no matter what, no matter how many tickets are sold, you're stuck paying for those fixed costs. And then you have what's called variable costs. In other words, things will go up according to the number of people. For example, the number of toilets that you're going to have to hire. The number of security will depend on the number of people. So they're called variable costs, okay? And when you put them all together, the variable cost and the fixed cost, you put them together, you get the total cost. And what you can see here is on the left-hand side, the total costs are way beyond the income until you get to this point here, which is called the break-even point. Oh, break-even point. I might have to change that. Break-even point. When the income, i.e. the number of tickets sold, goes beyond the total cost, and that in there, that area there is called the profit or surplus. All right, well, that's a very simplified thing. It's not actually like that because of time. Now, you've got to think, all right, well, let's say that we're a week or 2 weeks out from the event itself, and we're here. In other words, we're looking at a loss. We haven't pre-sold enough tickets. We're assuming we're not selling any on the day. We haven't pre-sold enough tickets to cover the costs. Now, can we cancel the event? Well, if you cancel the event, then you've got all those cancellation clauses in the contract. Remember them? And you could be up for a lot of money, a lot of money. So there could be penalty clauses as well, which means that you're not even up for that amount of money, you're actually up for a lot of money. Okay? You're not just the fixed costs, but there could be penalty clauses. So what do you do? Right? You haven't got enough tickets sold. So what are you going to do? Let's get some suggestions. Well, most people would say you've got to spend more on publicity. Okay, you want to get people to come to your concert or your magician show or comedy, whatever. You have to actually get more people to buy tickets, in which case you publicize it more. Now, what that does is increase your fixed cost. No matter what, you've spent that money. No matter how many ticket sales, you've spent that money. But the problem, that then raises the total cost of the event. See that? The extra publicity is a cost, so it raises the total cost of the event. And that's the original one. So you've got a new break-even point. And what does that mean? You've got to sell extra tickets to cover the extra cost of publicity. Now, this is extremely important. And this is the difference between success and failure in events. That first figure I showed you of variable costs and tickets is not about success. This is about succeeding. You have to juggle the costs and the ticket sales. And when I talk about ticket sales, I'm also talking about pre-sale tickets, by the way. We're not selling them any on the event itself. I'm also talking about conference registrations, number of people coming to the exhibition, right? All these things. So we're not just talking about music concerts. And that's the reality of the break-even chart. And they're the number of tickets sold, and they're the extra ones. I'll just finish off with a few benefits of things. Now, once again, we're talking return on investment here. And I've just got a bit of a chart here. We won't go through it all, and you can see what the benefits, because not every event is about money, of course, obviously direct money. Ultimately, it'll be about indirect money that will come in afterwards. It could be about staff morale, for example. It could be about keeping people in the area, making the town or city really exciting to be in which case you keep people. All of it gets down to things like that. These are social capital, okay? And once again, I'll put this up on the web and you can have a look through it. Now, this can be used for your assignments and all the rest of it, but I'm not really teaching this so that you can just do assignments. I'm actually teaching this so that you can manage events. You got it? Assignments are only going to measure one very small aspect of the ability to manage events. You really have to know a lot of these things. One thing that you're going to have to think about if you ever do conferences and all the rest of it that has to do with tickets or any entrance fees or anything like that is, how do you price it? How do you price the ticket? And there's a variety of ways of doing it, and you have to know. There's no point in us teaching you event management if you go out of business in the first year. So you've got to know these things. And the big thing here is what's called dynamic pricing, which you guys are very used to. It was never around when I was young, when I was your age. There was no such thing. But it's big time now, mainly because of computers. And you know that phone companies and hotel, and you can see all these things here. It's all about willingness to pay. How much will you pay, right? Originally, it was thought to, we'll do the price of the ticket to cover the cost of the event. That's good, and that's fine. It's good that it'll cover the cost of the event, but willingness to pay is the latest. In other words, as I said, with phone companies anyway, and it's called yield management. And once again, we can't go into great detail on this. And for a master's, I hope someone else goes into it. If not, just read one of my books on it all. Pricing of the tickets, and that's all I'll say. Okay. It's you live and die based on the price of the ticket. Okay. And have a think of it. How much do tickets cost for things? How much did tickets for your last music festival cost? If you went to see Bob Dylan, I don't know if he's still alive, would the ticket be the same as going and seeing Nicki Minaj? Is it the same price? I mean, how do they work out these things? We might have a bit of a discussion about it. The last part I just want to talk about, and hopefully you'll have this as part of the rest of the course, because sponsorship's a big thing. Finding the money is basically what we're talking about when we come to sponsorship. The Americans are absolutely expert in this, all their events. So I work in America every year, a couple of times generally. And the Americans are really, everything's sponsored. Like you go to an event, every single thing from the chair you sit in to the stages, to the sound system, to the tickets, everything's got sponsorship on it. All right, I'm going to leave that there and come back with event sponsorship.